Hello again, my friends. Before Half-Life Alyx comes out, I want to take one more deep dive into some amazing mods for Skyrim VR. This batch of mods greatly increases immersion in multiple ways, from combat to better landscapes. I find the modding community amazing, and it's so awesome that they keep making my favorite game better and better all the time. Let's get started with some fresh combat thanks to Weapon Throw VR. The name of the mod is pretty self-explanatory. It makes any melee weapon, shield, or torch throwable. Even bound weapons. There's a classic mode where you need to retrieve the weapon yourself, or an auto-return Thor mode. By default, there is an impact force that knocks back NPCs. The impact force, and just about everything else, is configurable with an impressive amount of options in the mod configuration menu. Before Weapon Throw VR came along, I would almost always ignore melee weapons or just sell them off. But this has dramatically expanded the combat in the game for me, so I'm not exclusively an archer anymore. Playing this is incredibly fun and a must-have. For a long time now, I found the vanilla water in Skyrim VR to be quite distracting in the distance. Since Bethesda removed water reflections in the VR version, in the distant water we're left with a rather awful-looking big blob of blue. But thankfully, we now have SkyVRaan, a mod that's sole purpose is to restore the beauty back into the VR waters. To me, the most dramatic improvement is the distant watercolor and reflections. It actually looks like water now. As a result, the overall landscapes look significantly better. The difference I'm showing in this video doesn't quite convey the improvement you see when you're actually viewing it in VR. The difference in VR is stunning. But it's not just the distant water. There's now a realistic transparency to nearby water as well. And since you can now see inside the water, the mod has added river rocks, boulders, algae, and river grass to the underwater landscape to give you something to look at. Thanks to SkyVRaan, the beauty has finally been restored to the landscapes. If you play Skyrim VR, then you need this mod installed. I can't recommend it highly enough. And speaking of improving visuals, less HUD VR removes the obnoxiously large health, magicka, and stamina bars, as well as the stealth meter and arrow count, so you can actually enjoy the scenery. But then how do you get informed if you're low on health or something else? That's what Better Resource Warnings is all about. You can customize several visual and audio effects to kick in when your resources are low. You can choose color overlays, reduced saturation, darker vision, increased heartbeats or heavier breathing, and more. My personal setup is to have the screen turn red and dark when I'm low on health. And when I'm low on magicka, the colors become desaturated. You can also choose a custom low stamina effect as well. With a combination of less HUD VR and better resource warnings, your vision is much less cluttered and more clear.
I'll show you a real fight.
To Your Face VR does a simple but still important fix. NPCs will no longer greet you unless you're looking at them. It's a small change, but it's so wonderful to not be overwhelmed or annoyed by everybody greeting you at the same time. Immersive gathering, wood chopping, and mining lets you chop wood and mine minerals like you expect to, but with one gotcha about mining that I'll explain in a bit. First off, the best part of this mod is the wood chopping. The first time you activate a log, it sets your currently active weapons as chopping weapons. After that, whenever you want to chop wood, you activate a log and some wood will appear. Then with your weapon of choice, the most obvious being an axe, you do a power attack by holding down trigger and then swinging down to split the wood. Then the firewood falls on the ground for you to retrieve. Chopping wood this way is an excellent upgrade compared to the vanilla way of wood magically appearing in your inventory. Also be sure to turn off axe throwing in the Weapon Throw VR setting, or you'll accidentally be throwing your axe when you want to chop wood. Now for the mining, the process is a little different from the lumber. You first have to equip your pickaxe, then activate an ore deposit, after which you swing your pickaxe and the ore will show up in your inventory. So unfortunately, this single mod executes both resources in different ways. Which is why I prefer to supplement this mod with another one, by the name of Ore Falls on the Ground, which was originally made for flat screen but plays perfectly in VR. Just swing the pickaxe like you're attacking and it drops ore on the ground for you to pick up, just like with the woodchopping. But for both of these mods to play nicely together, you need to unequip the pickaxe before you pick up the ore. Otherwise, the previously mentioned mod will get confused when you try to pick up the ore. So all you gotta do is swing to break off the ore, then holster the pickaxe, or equip another weapon, and then you can pick up the ore without the first mod being confused. Ore Falls in the Ground works on hearthfire items like quarried stone, or even mod-added minerals, like in Worm's Tooth. The only downside to this method is that there's no metal impact sound when you're swinging, but maybe someday that would be possible. And finally, I've shared VRIK before, which is the new gold standard when it comes to Skyrim VR. But since I last covered it, the mod author has added gesture support, and it's such a big feature that it's worth sharing again. So besides the visible body avatar and weapon holsters, the input gesture system allows you to bind actions to gestures on each hand, reducing the need to open your menus. They are performed by pressing a button on the controller, moving your hand, then releasing the button. It's all customizable, and there's a lot of possible hand movements to choose from that can activate almost anything you can think of. You can even use gestures to execute console commands. Personally, I'm still experimenting, but my current setup is to press the index controller touchpad and then move my hand up to summon the Flames spell. And to cast Unrelenting Force, I press the touchpad, then move my hand back and then forward again. And I've only scratched the surface of what's possible with these gestures. It's an incredibly powerful feature set. And one small update worth sharing is that VRIK allows you to hide the compass from your view to only reveal it when you lift your palm up, which is yet another way to have less visual clutter. So while not as massive a feature as the gestures, it's still a great addition. All of the details are on the VRIK mod page, which I'll link to below. And if you're looking for mod help or more mod suggestions, then I highly recommend joining the Skyrim VR Subreddit. I've learned so much from this community. They're incredibly open and helpful, so it's a great place to learn more about modding. Definitely join the Skyrim VR subreddit. Well, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. See ya!